So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where France and Germany go to war. Now these two countries have a history of going to war with each other, but what if it happened in the modern day when they're allies? Both of these countries are relatively strong. France is a top 10 military power in the world, but a war between these two would definitely draw in a ton of other countries. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. If you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All the support is greatly appreciated. And let's go ahead and jump straight into this video. Now these two ancient rivals, present day friends, are going to be duking it out. But it is kind of important to consider who declares war on who and for what reason. Now, of course, this scenario is going to be ignoring like all assets of reality, like NATO and stuff like that. We can't factor that in because otherwise this scenario would be very short. But let's say that France declares war on Germany over a border dispute over here in Alsace-Lorraine. Well, this area is geographically challenging. We know that from World War II. But modernly, it would be a lot easier to move troops through here compared to historical times. So France begins to move troops into Germany. And their target, of course, will be major cities like Frankfurt. But like I was saying earlier, this war would definitely draw in other countries, and Germany will be allying with all of the lowland countries, promising them French land if they get involved in the war to help out the Germans. So all three of the lowland countries, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, will join the war. Now this is going to suck for France for a few reasons, but mostly because it opens up an entirely new front over here in the north, and Belgium is going to be able to push not only their own troops in, but the troops of the other lowland countries in Germany, heading straight towards Paris. This little offensive, of course, is going to be extremely short-lived because the French are more than capable of pushing back these weaker countries out of their territory, but it does allow for the Germans to recuperate and also push back the French in the Alsace-Lorraine region. With the addition of the three new countries on the blue team, the war becomes pretty stalemated, pretty even, but there's always room to add more countries. Just unfortunately for France, not on their team, as the British will join the side of the Germans. So this has really quickly turned into a jumping of France, but France also is going to have some allies join the war because otherwise they would get stomped. This is a little bit unfair for them. So the French will go ahead and get Italy to join their side, as well as the Polish. So Germany adds the lowlands in the UK, and then France comes back and they add Italy and Poland, which are definitely a lot more capable than the lowland countries. The British, of course, are pretty evenly matched with the French, but Italy and Poland versus Germany and the lowland countries, that's not really a fair matchup. But we'll have to see what happens. Maybe Germany is going to upgrade their army a little bit. Well, they're going to have to do that and do it quickly because the Polish are crossing the border and getting right towards Berlin. Additionally, all of the advances that the blue team has made into France are now gone, and French troops are now crossing the border into Belgium, heading straight towards Brussels. The British and the French navies are going to be engaged in the English Channel, so there's not going to be much of a back and forth between these two, meaning the sole focus of this war is now on Central Europe, aka Germany. French troops will move back out from Alsace-Lorraine and head straight towards Frankfurt and reach the outskirts of the city, while Polish forces begin to enumerate outside of Berlin. Back over here in Belgium, they're able to capture their capital of Brussels, which goes ahead and capitulates pretty much all of Belgium. We also see French troops take over all of Luxembourg, which was a pretty easy task. And then we see red team troops enter into the Netherlands. Germany back over here is able to push off the Polish for a little bit, but they are still at a severe disadvantage, especially with having to fight a two-front war, which is something that France doesn't really have to do if we're not really counting this naval battle happening here. Or is it? Because the blue team just got another member to join in on this war, and this time it's Spain. Spain will open up an entirely new front down here in the south, and will distract both France and Italy in the long run, meaning that Germany is going to have more time to probably exist and also get troops from the British to come in, because at this point they're definitely going to need them. Poland and France both have huge militaries, and the manpower far outpasses that of Germany. Anyway though, back down on this new front down here, we see Spanish troops cross the border into French territory, and their main target is the southern Mediterranean area for France. The Spaniards and the British have an idea in mind, and that idea is to cut off France in all naval aspects, basically just landlocking them to themselves. If the British and Spanish navies can work together to cut off France from all coastal areas, including the entrance into the Mediterranean, then they think that they can maybe start like a war of attrition. And when your troops are hungry and your people are hungry, things start going bad. But there are a lot of other things that need to be accounted for, such as, first of all, destroying the entire French Navy, but also the Suez Canal over here is a little bit of an issue. So they would need pure naval dominance, and that might be kind of hard to come by. But Spanish troops will continue to advance into France. There's not a whole lot of French troops defending this area, so they mostly go untouched. That is until France actually does send down troops, and then Italy does as well. And Spain's advance into red team territory is going to be very short-lived. At least how large it was is going to be very short-lived. They're pushed all the way back over here to where the border is, and eventually they stalemate. While back up north, the entrance of Spain into the war gave Germany the opportunity to go ahead and push back French troops once more. However, they don't push them back as far as they once did, which is definitely going to be a cause of concern for the blue team in the future if they want to keep Germany in this war. Now, speaking of Germany, they're having a little bit of an issue pushing back the Polish, specifically around the border of Czechia, and this is definitely troublesome for their capital city city of Berlin, as now the Polish have a very solid foothold in German territory and are looking to go ahead and take their capital city. So what does Germany do? They bring back the Third Reich, or not. Maybe that's not a good idea. Anyway, back down south here, Spanish troops have now kind of shifted their focus over to the Bay of Biscay. They are now pushing up the western coast of France, and using this river, they've set themselves up with a very nice natural boundary. Back over in the lowland countries, though, things are going a little bit better with the influx of British troops arriving. The Netherlands is freed of all occupying forces, and Brussels is even on the horizon. But back over here, Poland has just captured Berlin, and that's definitely not ideal for the blue team. So with Poland having a full-on foothold over here in the easternmost part of Germany, things aren't looking too good for the France versus Germany scenario, but luckily this has turned into something much more. This is, well, Western Europe fighting itself. So at least, like, if Germany loses, then it doesn't look too bad, because you can be like, oh, well, all these other countries got involved. Well, that, my friend, is an excuse. It's hard to make excuses for Polish tanks rolling through your territory, but that's exactly what's happening. Anyway, the British have just won the naval battle in the English Channel, and France's navy, at least up here in the north, has been severely damaged, meaning that it's about time for a naval landing in France. Now, that is something that is going to be extremely difficult to pull off, especially considering the manpower that France has. They're going to be able to arm their coast and fight off any British forces, or not, because they just landed over here. And the British have themselves a foothold in France. However, that was very costly resource-wise and manpower-wise, so who knows if it's going to have a large effect in the war in the long run. But for now, French forces have just broken through this front line over here and are heading straight towards Frankfurt until they eventually capture it. And with the German military starting to crumble, French and Polish forces eventually meet in the middle of Germany, splitting the country into two separate pieces and destroying any chance that Germany had at surviving any longer in this war. British troops are able to help take back Brussels and even more of the Belgian coast, but the main battle is over in Germany, and that's where the British are falling short, because a lot of Polish forces are getting their revenge right now. Eventually, them as well as French forces will go ahead and capture this major city down here. I believe they call it Munich. Anyway, Germany is going to go ahead and lose in the south with the capturing of Munich, and from there, well, Germany's basically out of here. At this point, there's just a ton of foreign troops here, like Dutch and British troops. The Germans, in large, have mostly surrendered at this point, and the battle for the lowlands begins to, well, begin. The British naval landing in France, though, that actually is looking pretty promising. With the fall of Germany, the British have gone ahead and executed a new plan, which is basically pulling all of their troops out of this area and instead slamming them right into the north of France. The focus of the war has shifted at this point. Since Germany has fallen, we need to take out the strongest country in this alliance in order to try to get a peace treaty. And the strongest country in this alliance, of course, is France. So if you take the leader out, which is France, these two other countries are gonna probably come to the negotiation table because they don't want to fight the war anymore, especially Poland, who already has what they want. If France were to fall, they would definitely go ahead and try to get a peace treaty. And as for Italy, well, I'm not too sure what they're doing. But it doesn't matter, because British troops are at this point going right on through France. They've cut off Brittany, and from there, they're able to land forces here and take it with ease. Back over in the lowland countries, French and Polish troops have gone ahead and captured the rest of Belgium. However, it's at this point that we see that French troops are kind of called back, and Poland is going to fight this on their own, which is going to be very difficult because they're very far from home. But those French forces are being called back for a pretty good reason. Western France has fallen. So they want to make sure that's, of course, secured. You know, you don't want British troops in your capital city. That would be pretty bad for business. So French forces begin to push back against both the Spanish and the British, now reaching all the way down to the Spanish border near Catalonia. But unfortunately for France, these two groups are able to eventually meet up, which is going to be kind of a logistical issue for France. And with even more British troops landing in France, it is not looking too good for them. Well, that is in the north at least, because in the south, France is having a lot of success in pushing back the Spanish military, now reaching all the way over here to this bay and cutting off the Spanish forces from probably their own forces as well as the British forces. But France is able to secure the southern front and now only has to worry about the British front up north. And after a few back and forth skirmishes across a few months, France begins to take an advantage, now moving closer and closer to Brittany. Back over in the Netherlands, they are holding out. They're pushing back some of the Polish and French forces that are stationed there, but it's definitely noticeable that there isn't an emphasis on this front anymore because the red team has stopped trying to invade this area. Instead, they're now solely focused on protecting France. So who is going to budge first? Is the red team going to gain an advantage, or is the blue team going to have a swing of momentum? Well, to start off, the blue team is able to convince Denmark to join the war, which is very interesting considering the fact that Denmark versus Poland goes bad for Denmark 100 times out of 100. But with this front line now pressuring France, and with Denmark joining the war and also pressuring Poland, things could definitely start to swing in the favor of the blue team. So Danish troops will cross the border into northern Germany, and they'll immediately get stopped by Polish forces because well, it's Poland versus Denmark. So the red team's going to go ahead and try to do something of their own. They're going to try to pressure another country to join their side, and this time it's the Irish. Yeah, all the neutral countries are getting involved today. What's next? Switzerland. Oh, yeah, no, we can't be that unrealistic. That's too far. Ireland joining is already enough, but with Ireland joining the war, they of course are going to do what they want to do the most, and they're going to take back Northern Ireland. This is going to serve as a huge distraction for the British, and France uses this opportunity to pull off a counteroffensive, reaching all the way over to the coast and now separating these army groups into 3 different groups. They then go even more surgical and split this group off. Now the British have 2 separate fronts, but they mostly begin to work on this center area where a lot of troops are. The British, of course, are going to have to try to pull as many guys out of this area as possible because simply enough, it's not safe and there's no way to really supply them other than by sea. At this point, the French Navy has been pretty much dismantled by the British and Spanish navies, so France is working on a land advantage. Back over in the lowland countries, the Netherlands is doing really good actually. With the red team not focusing on this front line, they've been able to make some small gains back against them. And now the blue team has a new plan. Basically, the British know that Ireland is just going to hold on to Northern Ireland. They're not going to try to invade the mainland British Isles because first of all, they can't. Logistically, that's impossible. They don't have enough naval vessels. They just can't do it. So knowing that, just Northern Ireland is gone, the British are okay with that. This is simply just a distraction from the main front line. And now with the Netherlands pushing back successfully and also the Danish joining the war and creating a little bit of a diversion for Poland, a new plan is schemed up by the blue team to land troops in this part of Germany to create an entirely new front line. A very large front line that the red team doesn't have the resources to fight back against. Now, who's to say the blue team has the resources to do that? Well, that's a good question, actually. Well, they're going to employ the help of yet another country, and this time, it's going to be Norway. Another neutralish country getting drawn in the conflict. Yeah, France and Germany fighting apparently would bring about the end of the world, or the Western world at least. But with Norwegian oil now flowing through the veins of the blue team, things are looking pretty chopped and cooked for the red team. The British do go ahead and make that landing, and the red team does not see it coming. It's a huge loss for them as they begin to push back against red team forces in the northwest of Germany. French troops are able to eradicate all of these front lines in the south and in the middle of their country, but there are definitely more pressing issues, especially considering the fact that Brussels has just been recaptured, and Poland is currently overextending their occupation, meaning that more and more areas of Germany are beginning to be opened up, simply because France was too distracted with their own front lines. They didn't help Poland occupy Germany, and now Poland has to kind of move their troops around because, hey, we weren't expecting, this. So while France moves forces into Germany to fight back against the blue team, Poland is going to make a very interesting decision. After the blue team starts to near Munich, they're going to pull all of their occupational forces out of Bavaria. France is not a big fan of that. So only the French occupation remains over here in southwest Germany, while the Polish occupation is limited to only eastern Germany. And the Spanish are back. Spain is starting yet another all-out offensive front against the French, and this time they're a lot more successful than they have been in previous times, considering that they're now reaching all the way over here towards Italy. Back up north, the French are able to push the British out of their original landing spot, but they do hold on to Brittany, and they also make another push towards Brussels, but are unable to capture the city. Spanish forces will continue to move up until eventually they stop. The war just kind of freezes for a few days. No major gains are made on either side, and it's because somebody just switched sides. The British, the Germans, and the Spanish all went to a friend of France's, and they're like, hey, we got a deal for you. First of all, let's establish the fact that you being in this war in the first place is pretty stupid. You're not going to get any land gains from this. You don't border any enemy countries. So why are you even fighting for France? Second of all, if you do join our side, we'll go ahead and forgive you. You don't have to pay any war reparations or anything like that. And as an added bonus for switching sides, you'll even get land out of joining our side. It just makes more sense for you to be fighting with us instead of France. Take a wild guess, which country is going to be switching sides? Yeah, it's Italy. Italy, now motivated by actual land gains instead of just fighting for France as a friend, is going to join the war on the side of the blue team. Immediately, they'll go ahead and occupy all of Corsica, and France is having an absolute temper tantrum. This is not going to plan at all. Italian forces will move across their border with France and go ahead and meet up with Spanish forces, and together, they'll start a front line towards the city of Lyon. Back over in Germany, we do see Polish forces push back against the Danish and British, and they're even able to meet all the way up to the border of Denmark. Well, that's for a pretty good reason, because at this point, the whole war effort has changed to focusing primarily on France. Germany at this point has been restored, and their capital is most likely down here in Munich. And now, while they're pushing back against the France, they're able to push them all the way out of the lowlands. We have the capturing of Lyon, the entrance of the blue team into northern France, and slowly but surely, the blue team begins to make gains all over France, specifically up in the north, where there are a ton of German troops who are very motivated to go ahead and take Paris for the many a time in history. So that's exactly what they do. Paris is captured by blue team forces, Alsace-Lorraine is lost over to the Germans, and when they meet their Italian and Spanish friends down in the south, France at this point has capitulated. They are pretty exhausted from the war. They've been fighting multiple fronts for a very long time now, and yeah, they just go ahead and surrender. Fitting end for France. But what about Poland and Ireland? Well, Poland is going to demand a peace treaty, and they're going to say, we're going to take some land from Germany, and we're done, we're out of your hair. I don't know if the blue team would really like that because, well, they definitely had the numbers to overthrow Poland at this point. But then as for Ireland, they're also kind of just wanting to take Northern Ireland, and they'll be out of your hair. You know, do whatever you want to France. We don't care about them. Just leave us alone. That's not happening, bruv. British forces, probably out of spite, will land in Northern Ireland, and they'll deal with Ireland. Yeah, sorry, Ireland. All right, Poland, your move. Will they go down fighting, or will they give up early? Well, they're going to give up early. It would be pretty cinematic for Poland to go out with a fight, but I don't think that they would. So they're not going to. And the blue team is going to win this war. Now, I know that it was France versus Germany, and it kind of advanced into something that was definitely not France versus Germany. But if you did want it just to be a 1v1, then France would win against Germany. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty, you see France get turned into something that is of horrors and something that cartographers and people that like geography alike are not going to improve of. But hey, just pretend it isn't there. It's not gonna hurt you, I promise. So starting up here in the British Isles first, despite not being the main character in this video, and also despite joining the war very late, Ireland gets absolutely folded over by the British, and they are now a part of the Neo-British Empire. France and Germany going to war brought about the absolute worst timeline to exist, and the world is gonna have to deal with it. Not only do the British take over all of Ireland, they also take over all of Brittany. Moving down to Spain, and they will go ahead and take over a lot of southern land from France. Andorra is now completely surrounded by Spain, which means they probably won't be there for very long. Over to Italy, they go ahead and take over a ton of southern French coast along the Mediterranean and also all of Corsica. Germany gets back Alsace-Lorraine. The Belgians get a lot of land, and Luxembourg turns into de Luxembourg. As for Poland, they get a slap on the wrist. They're told never to do that again, and if you do it again, then we're going to do a lot more than slap you on the wrist. But since they had so much land and occupation in Germany, Poland gets out of this war without having any punishment, no reparations, no land loss, nothing like that. Poland is basically just set free like it never happened. Of course, the hundreds of thousands of Polish troops that died, they're not going to forget. Well, they are going to forget because they're dead, but the people that, knew them, they're not going to forget. So hey, maybe there's a part 2 to this video. Except I don't do part 2s for these videos. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's scenario. So let me know what you think about this thing, France. But yeah, anyway, if you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. I'm still working on the merch for 200K. It's pretty close to being done. I think I'll probably have it ready by Saturday's video, which is the WICSO episode. So tune into that. If you want to make sure there's an official announcement, you can also join the Discord server. I'll announce it there, of course. And also, most importantly, I'll announce it on the community tab here on the channel when it's live. I just have like one more WICSO design to do, and 1 or 2 more 200K designs to do. I haven't been able to do it over the past couple days because I've been home for a break, and I use that to kind of take a break from everything, school and YouTube included. Once again, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to show some support. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Andrew Rowe 2, Turno Apex, Omega the YouTuber, Terminator, Aiden Shank, Icy Static
See
FN,
What I Do,
CTG on YT,
AdizzPro,
Euroball,
Bren,
Jazzy
Green
Gerboa,
France Mapping,
Nevada Garbage Trucks,
Vista,
Knighthood
Rocker
7353,
GNR 95,
Ozgeo,
Big
A
Goose,
Norwegian,
RS,
and Golden Ball Mapping,
Zaylance,
Laser Taze,
Augusto,
Pablo Sigma Cat,
and
Hammer Toad 45. Once again, thank you guys.